Good morning, everybody. On this soggy DC morning with lots of traffic and gray skies, I want to welcome everybody. Thrilled to see so many people at this first public forum on the future state of the IRS. And I want to just let you all know that we are printing off more copies of the testimony. We had no idea there'd be this many people, so this is thrilling. Before we get to our first panel, first I want to say I am Nina Olson, the National Taxpayer Advocate, and I am convening this forum and the others around the country. I want to introduce, before I introduce the Commissioner of the IRS, John Koskinen, I do want to make a few remarks before he presents his welcoming remarks. As you know, I raised concerns in my annual report to Congress that the IRS was developing its future state plan without adequately telling the public what it was considering or soliciting public comments. I also raised concerns about whether the IRS would be able to achieve hoped-for cost savings by transitioning taxpayers from relatively expensive telephone and face-to-face service toward relatively cheap online taxpayer accounts while still meeting taxpayer needs. In fact, I designated this issue the #1 most serious problem of taxpayers and announced that I would be holding public forums or hearings around the country to get taxpayers engaged in the planning for the future state vision. Because of the concerns I expressed, one tax publication just yesterday led with the headline, Koskinen Olson to Face Off on Taxpayer Service Future State. Because the IRS received such late notice of this event, it wasn't able to set up a boxing ring in time, so we can't bring you that spectacle. Seriously, though, that headline, while attention-getting, could not be further from the truth. After I raised my concerns with the Commissioner last month, he said he would put out more information about the IRS's plan, and the IRS just yesterday placed a considerable amount of information about the future state plan on its public website. The Commissioner has also made clear that the IRS is not locked into any particular plan, and he has made clear he believes the IRS must strive to continue to meet the needs of all taxpayers, including taxpayers who can't or don't want to interact with the agency using online accounts. And he graciously, thank you, offered to join us for a few minutes this morning to underscore that message and to make clear he welcomes these public forums as a vehicle through which the IRS can learn about taxpayer needs and preferences. The role of the National Taxpayer Advocate and her annual report to Congress was designed to spur the IRS to change and improvement. I am proud that this year's report has resulted in greater transparency for and taxpayer and tax community engagement in the IRS future state planning process. The decisions made during this process can alter the relationship between taxpayers and the tax agency for decades going forward and are not to be made lightly or in a vacuum. For my part, I want to acknowledge that the IRS faces some very difficult resource allocation decisions because of the budget restrictions it's operating under. High-quality taxpayer service can't be provided on the cheap, and with the IRS budget down about 19% in inflation-adjusted terms since fiscal year 2010, its options are increasingly limited. Congress gave the IRS an additional $290 million this year for several components of taxpayer assistance, and that is very helpful, but it doesn't get us where we need to be over the long run. Over the long run, it is very clear to me that providing high-quality taxpayer service requires a commitment not only from the IRS, but from the Congress as well. So, Commissioner, I welcome you and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Nina. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to this first, as Nina said, in a series of forums on the future state of IRS taxpayer service. As Nina noted in a little kind of pre-forum hype, some in the press advertised this as a face-off between Nina and me on the future state. And my first thought was that we should sell tickets because that would help with our budget problem. My next thought was a concern, though, that you'd be disappointed to find out that Nina and I both agree this is an important issue and that any future state should ensure the best possible service for all taxpayers, whatever their inclinations. So in any event, whether you bought a ticket or snuck in on your own, we're delighted you're here. The IRS has benefited greatly over the years from the perspectives, insights, and concerns of our stakeholders. We have standing advisory groups, some members of which you'll hear from today, such as ERPAC, ERSAC, and ETAC. We love acronyms at the IRS. Those groups of outside stakeholders and practitioners provide us on a regular basis with suggested actions we could take, many of which we're able to adopt. We also have informal meetings on a regular basis, such as a couple I attended last week, with representatives of practitioners and organizations of tax professionals. We do surveys of taxpayers to monitor their experiences with our services and their satisfaction with them, and to learn of their interest in or desire for expanded services of one kind or another. Thus, I'm very pleased that Nina and the Taxpayer Advocate Office has organized gatherings like this across the country to give us additional insights into the taxpayer experience now, along with suggestions for future improvements. The IRS has been on an evolutionary path for many years to improve service and enforcement. In fact, I was intrigued to learn recently that the IRS Restructuring Act of 1998 required the IRS to develop an online account for taxpayers. So the future state is not a new initiative, but instead brings together a number of initiatives into an overall perspective of where we want to go over the next 3 to 5 years. We've already taken, as many of you know, most of you probably, a number of significant steps in this direction. With the increased use of our website, irs.gov, as a source of information, along with the development of applications that allow you to determine the status of your refund, get a copy of a prior year's return, make an online payment, enter in an online installment agreement. At the same time, the environment in which we are operating is changing. We confront a dynamic global economy and tax compliance challenges across the world, a complex tax code made more so with new benefits and mandates, and a growing population of customers with challenging expectations. We envision a future that continues to protect taxpayers' rights. It's a future that meets the needs of all taxpayers, and it's one that keeps traditional lines of service open for those who need them. The IRS, as Nina noted, has no plans to walk away from providing the assistance over the phone or in person. And in fact, we're working hard to free up resources in those areas so it's easier for people to get access to them and get the help they want. Our goal is to increase the availability and quality of operations, whether online or in face, to face transactions, so taxpayers' interactions with us, whether in service side or the enforcement side, are accomplished in a manner that's fast, secure, accurate, and complete. Over the next 5 years, we'll take a measured approach with feedback from stakeholders all along the way, like many of you here and from the forums across the country, but also on a continual basis from our standing advisory committees. All of that will play an important role in the process going forward, as it has in the past. A critical factor over the long term, of course, as Nina noted, is the IRS budget and putting our workforce and the budget on a sustainable, stable basis, because it would go a long way toward improving operations to better serve the public and enforce the tax code if we had appropriate and accessible resources. Ultimately, our pace of progress hinges on the IRS budget. And those of you who have been stuck listening to me for over 2 years understand that it's been a critical part of our discussions almost from the start of my tenure. As Nina noted, we're pleased that the IRS budget for 2016 was increased significantly for the first time in 6 years with an additional $290 million. But this is just a start and was less than half of the additional funds we requested for the 3 areas of focus for that money: taxpayer service, identity theft, and cybersecurity. The proposed President's budget for 2017 calls on Congress to fund the IRS at a level of almost $12.3 billion, and basically the level we received in 2010, 7 years ago. Since then, since 2010, we have 10 million more taxpayers and unfunded mandates that we have to and have been implementing, including the Affordable Care Act, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, the ABLE Act, the Health Coverage Tax Credit, and the Private Debt Collection Act. But funding at the 2010 level, even though it would still be significantly below an inflationary adjusted number, would be a wonderful step forward for us. And we'll hope that Congress, having now figured out how to give us additional funding rather than cut us each year, will continue that progress. This forum is one of many public discussions on the future state of the IRS that will take place both around the country under the advocacy of the taxpayer advocate, but also through ongoing meetings with our standing committees and hearings and briefings on the Hill. But as a result, we appreciate everybody's participation, in particular all of you who have come to join us for this kickoff, as it were, forum. All of us at the IRS look forward to the results of these proceedings, to the suggestions, the insights you provide us, and for the concerns you have about where taxpayer service is now and where it ought to go over the next 3 to 5 years. As I've said, our goal is not to go to the moon. We're not trying to do something out of the blue, out of the ordinary. Our goal really is to improve and expand taxpayer services for all taxpayers, in particular for those who expect, in many ways demand, that they be able to deal with us online and in a digital economy. Our goal is simply to try to catch up with where financial institutions are across the country already, which means that, as I've said to many of you, there is not a clear plan for what 5 years from now should definitely look like, because none of us know exactly what the world is going to look like in 5 years. The technology is going to change, experiences of taxpayers will change, and one of the things that's critical for all of us is for the IRS to always be agile and adaptable and responsive to what the experience of taxpayers is over the course of time, what the experience is in the digital economy, what the experience is of people who need to contact us directly in their most desired mode of contact. So again, I wish everybody an informative day today and appreciate your taking the time to join us and provide your insights. Good luck.